right, let's do it.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Columbus Wired podcast. I'm here, as always, with my co-host, Andy Evans. We are joined with our off and on again co-host, Mr. Dillon Davis of the Delaware Gazette. It's nice to have you back, Dillon. You couldn't make the last one because you were in Eugene trying to fly back and then get other stuff, but it's good to have you. Let's get right into it. Yesterday, we jokingly say it's an overreaction, but I don't. We were talking pre-show. I'm going to overreact a little bit, but I think a lot of it's legitimate. But we got some concerns with the Buckeyes' lackluster offensive effort, or are we impressed with their defense? So we definitely want to talk about that with great effort after the Oregon game. I still have some questions about the defense too. Chip Kelly called a bland game. A lot of people blowing up my phone about the play calling not being very good. Defense, they look solid at a lot of points in the game. They did make stops when they needed to, especially at the end of the game to seal off the game. But is it going to be enough? I mean, we got Penn State undefeated, then we got Indiana shortly after that. And I don't know, but I said last weekend with Indiana blowing out Nebraska the way they did, if we didn't do the same, it was going to get loud about, do we need to fire Ryan Day? Is Ryan Day good enough to make it? Is his team good enough to make it? And so we're definitely going to get in that. And then Andy's favorite segment, of course, Screw the Blue, coming with the Rodents' pretty unimpressive victory over Michigan State. So let's get right into it. Buckeyes barely beat the Cornhuskers. It was they got off to a slow start. They made a ton of mistakes. It was a season low, 285 yards. Season low rushing, 64 yards. No TDs. 1 and 10 on third down. So many 3-and-outs in bad field position. Thankfully, our punter didn't. Thankfully, he made his kicks, unlike our field goal kicker. It just was not a good look. Our offensive line, I really just want to get right into the offensive line, Andy. I'm not going to lie. The offensive line is not good. We talked about it a lot last year. They didn't have depth. They didn't really do much with recruiting. They did get some freshmen. I want to get right into it because I'm going to keep talking about it because I'm bothered by it. Dillon, you were pretty fired up before. I can't get over the offensive line mainly because Josh Simmons going down and everything. So I'm going to keep stumbling over my words. So I'm going to put it in your guys' hands. So you guys were in the press box talking about it yesterday. But Dillon, what did you think about yesterday's game, specifically the offense, and just all around?
Well, I mean, I guess fired up about it. I'm fired up because, I think the Ohio State season's just about over because of this one thing. I mean, I think that I don't see any way Ohio State could go win a national championship or even make it to the Big Ten title and win that game, assuming Oregon's waiting there with this offensive line the way it is. And I say that because it's not going to get any better. It's not going to get any better. This is the bed that Ohio State made 3-4 years ago over the course of 3 or 4 years with the way they've recruited, particularly at tackle, the misses they've had. Look, we know Ohio State recruits at a high level all across the board, except offensive line. And not only have they not recruited at a high level across the offensive line, it's been an absolute joke. And now this is the bed that they have, and they're going to lie on it. It's not going to get better. I don't know what the status of Zimahowski is moving forward, but we saw, how badly he got exposed yesterday. And behind him is a bunch of what? George Fitzpatrick, with all due respect, okay, that's probably another Zen Mahalski situation where, especially going to Penn State next week, where Abdul Carter is waiting for him, Mr. First-round draft pick in the making is waiting for him. So, it's bad. It's bad all the way around. And there's a ripple effect that happened when Josh Simmons got hurt, because now you can't leave a running back in the backfield to help Josh Fryer. You can't leave a tight end to help him. Now, if you're going to help somebody, now you're going to have to help that left side, because that left side's a bigger liability than the right side was, prior to Josh Simmons' injury. So there's a ripple effect that makes this offensive line weaker across the board. And it's not going to get better. Like I said, if Ohio State decides to go to Donovan Jackson, at tackle at Penn State like that, he's not going to all of a sudden be a All-American left tackle or an All Big Ten left tackle. Like there's a reason why he's been a 3-year starter at guard. He's a really good guard. He's not going to be a All-American tackle. They're gonna have issues to tackle the rest of the year, and I just don't see how you can win anything of any significance with that. And it's too bad because I'm not overreacting to anything else I saw yesterday, other than the fact that offensive line is as bad as it looked, and it's not going to get better, in my opinion. I just don't know how anybody would have the opinion that it could get better, given what we know that's on that roster right now. So,
Andy, do you have any differences in opinion?
Nah, not really. Yeah, I fraudulently said, maybe not fraudulently said during a Wednesday at the Woody that I couldn't really tell a huge difference in the Oregon game between Zen Mahalski and Josh Simmons. I mean, let's face it, Ohio State, I mean, they only gave up one sack. That was near the end of the game. This was against Oregon. And that was because Will Howard slipped. Otherwise, aside from a non-existent running game against Oregon that was proffered by two huge Travion Henderson runs, the offensive line was formidable against Oregon. However, yesterday, we saw Zen Mahalski unfortunately get exposed. The early game sack, the early game sack on Will Howard, that was Zen Mahalski. There were a couple of other plays where the running game was getting blown up because guys were just, the defensive ends for Nebraska were just spinning right around Zen Mahalski, just a turnstile there. So, and the fact that now Zen Mahalski got hurt and we don't know the extent of the injury quite yet, but to Dillon's point, now what are you going to do? I mean, after that happened, and granted it was late in the game, so it's not like they had to go too much longer with Donovan Jackson at left tackle and then Luke Montgomery at left guard, which, I mean, I believe in Luke Montgomery. He was, one of the highest rated offensive linemen in the state a couple of years ago coming out of high school, and he was being talked about early, after the spring and early fall camp that he could potentially make his way into the starting lineup. It didn't happen, but now is that what they're going to do? Or to Dillon's point, do they keep Donovan Jackson at left guard and then they throw in like George Fitzpatrick, who's, on the two deep, but kind of a third stringer of sorts. So it's definitely disconcerting. Am I ready to throw in the towel on the Buckeyes? Not quite yet, but you almost kind of see the handwriting on the wall that after, a lot of people in Buckeye Nation were expecting a huge response, and we got a response. It just wasn't quite the one that I think a lot of Buckeye fans were hoping for and expecting. So if that's the case, that this is kind of the Ohio State team now that we're going to see, especially when it comes to the offensive line. Be interesting to see what old Ryan says when he comes out on Tuesday. I've got my question marks too. I feel a little more nervous about their chances of, not just making the Big Ten championship game, but knocking off a Penn State at Penn State, who looked good in a nice little comeback win, if you will, against Wisconsin last night. And obviously you've still got the Hoosiers and the Rodents looming large. So definitely some question marks, especially when it comes to the offensive line.
Yeah, I'm on the same page. I'm not quite. I'll be ready to throw in the towel if we lose next week, and then to Indiana for sure. I did like there were some positives I saw yesterday. We did connect on some deep balls, which was nice to see. Carnell Tate getting involved. We all heard. I mean, he was pretty highly talked up by the other wide receivers last year, specifically Marvin Harrison Jr. And he's kind of been really overshadowed by, how good Jeremiah Smith is, and then it's Emeka Egbuka's last year. But he had some really good touches. He had a nice day, 102 yards, 1 touchdown. We did see, Jeremiah Smith getting involved. We did see Emeka Egbuka getting involved. I think that's refreshing, but again, the running plays seem to be designed specifically to only run to the left, and it just kept getting blown up. It didn't seem like we were making many adjustments, and really without that running game, I don't think we can just throw deep balls. Maybe we can mix something up to kind of set up the run with the pass, but It did seem like our line was doing better for pass blocking than running blocking. I mean, what did you guys feel with that? Did you notice that? I mean, it. There was a lot of times in the first half though where it was just bad on offense. Then our defense was put in tough positions. Um, what did you notice any difference with that, Dylan, with pass versus run?
No, look, I mean, if I sat down and watched the film over the course of that entire game, there will be plays where Zen Mahalski or whoever the case might be didn't grade out as a failure on that play. Like, yeah, there were times. I can't remember which touchdown. It might have been the first one to Carnell Tate, or maybe I think it was the first one to Carnell Tate. Zen Mahalski stood up on an island and stood the defensive end right up, and held up there. And Will Howard had a nice clean pocket to throw and delivered a throw to Carnell for a touchdown. So there were times, where Zen Mahalski looked like he could play. And like to your point, Andy, real quick too, there wasn't a huge difference when he came in the game against Oregon, but also you have to think, Nebraska had a week to game plan and say, hey, we're going to go after Zen Mahalski. We don't think that guy can play, at this level. So that might have played into it. But no, I didn't see a massive difference though, to be honest with you. Run block compared to pass block, and I guess quite literally there was nothing, no big hitters in the run game, and there were a few times where they were able to get off, some longer shots in the pass game. So obviously there were some, better moments in the pass game, on the offensive line, but I didn't notice a huge difference. And not only that, but like the inability to run the football makes, and Will Howard said as much after the game, the inability to run the football makes their play action game absolutely pointless because nobody
Yeah.
respects their ability to run the ball. So that takes away a whole other element as well. So yeah, I didn't notice a huge difference. It was just a complete debacle in the run game, and there were some moments in the pass game, but that's as good as it got.
Well, let's move on to the defense. If you guys are down, yesterday they allowed 273 total yards, second most on the year, 3 sacks, 13 tackles for a loss, one pick, one forced fumble. Held Nebraska Dylan Raiola to a season low, 152 yards. Didn't allow a passing TD for the fourth time this year. Uh, Blitzes worked and didn't work at times. It was kind of like a live by the blitz, die by the blitz situation. We went from never blitzing to it felt like kind of blitzing maybe a little too much. Um, is it a good enough rebound to be happy, or do we need to fire Jim Knowles too for being so inconsistent? What do you is that an overreaction there? Is it time to fire Jim Knowles? Do we need a clear house in the defense end? Dylan, what do you think?
No, I thought it was a solid bounce back. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say there wasn't anything that I didn't enjoy about the performance from the defense, but I thought it was a solid bounce back. They definitely did dial up some pressure in different ways. More, we saw some different personnel packages as well. Saw Edric Houston in there at tackle, which was interesting to see him on the field. A and B that he was in there at tackle. So saw some different things. So that's the biggest thing I want to see. I want to see Ohio State the defense look different. After what we saw against Oregon and what Ryan Day had to say in the 2 weeks leading up to this. I wanted to see something look different, and it did. Were there some times where they dialed up blitzes that I didn't necessarily think were the times for that? Yeah, but also I appreciated the fact that that they did it. And there was a time, I think it was a pass play. I can't remember the moment of the game, but there was a time where they sent Caleb Downs on a blitz, and he came free right at the gut, and Dylan Raiola just stood in there and delivered a big throw. Tip of the hat to Dylan Raiola. Like, that's football. He could have just said like, well, shit, and eat it, and Caleb Downs would have had a freebie, or he could have tried to panic and just start the football, and who knows what happens there. So that's just football. But I enjoyed the fact that they were doing those kind of things. So overall, I thought the defense played well. We know that they played well enough to win the game, or the Ohio State wouldn't have won the game. Now that's relative to a Nebraska team that has its own issues. I understand that, but I thought it was an overall solid bounce back from the defense. For as much as they were out on the field, certainly as well. And they gave up 17 points ultimately. Now I know that last touchdown that gave Nebraska the lead, you like the defense to continue to stand on its head there, but look, you can only ask a defense so many times to go win the game for you, and eventually they're going to give up some points. So I'm not making excuses for the defense, though it wasn't perfect by any measure, but I thought it was an overall good bounce back performance, and if it wasn't, they wouldn't have won the football game. So I guess that's the way I look at it.
Andy.
Absolutely, it's time to fire Jim Knowles. That was awful. I mean, that was the worst performance I have ever seen. Play calling was terrible. No, that is a major overreaction. Is it time to fire Jim Knowles? Absolutely not. Did he make some questionable, call blitzes at times that you would hope that it would pay off, and it didn't, like on 2 third downs and Dillon, the one pass where he sent Downs, passing play that he sent Downs in right up the middle on a blitz, and Downs was completely unabated, but Raiola stood tough in the pocket. That was the pass on 3rd and 7 there early in the fourth quarter that their wide receiver Isaiah Nayer caught and was ruled a touchdown originally, but after review was ruled down at the 1 yard line, but it was 1st and goal from the 1, and they ended up scoring from there. The other one was Downs came on a blitz. He did get caught by, I believe, the running back right up the middle, kind of at the last second, chipped off Downs, and it just opened up a major sea. I mean, the Red Sea parted, literally the red jerseys parted. There was a hole right up the middle, and Raiola scampered off for a 38-yard run. And however, early in the game, Knowles dialed up a linebacker blitz from Styles and Simon, and they got Raiola for a sack. And that was first drive of the game for Nebraska. There was obviously the defensive goal line stand there, late in the third quarter, 4th and goal, and they were able to stop Nebraska on the dive over the pile. Simon got in there, wrapped up Dowdell's legs, and then I believe it was Dowdell, and then Igbinosun, was able to kind of stand him up and stop him from any more forward momentum. So definitely a hit and miss game defensively. But like you just said, Dylan, the fact that those guys were on the field for nearly, or actually for over 10 more minutes technically than the offense was. They were out there for a long time yesterday. Nebraska ran like almost 20 more plays than Ohio State. They were on the field offensively for 10 more minutes. So the defense was out there for a long time. So the fact that, they only allowed 1 touchdown and it held them to less yards technically than Ohio State gained, despite Nebraska having the ball for nearly 20 more plays in 10 more minutes. I think it actually is a testament that this defense, I mean, this was a complete 180 from the Oregon game, right? We were complaining about the defense after Oregon. They're getting burned, this and that. Now, maybe the talent level at Nebraska, not quite as up to par as Oregon. Right. And so they were able to do some things defensively that they were still doing against Oregon, but they were just able to make it happen against Nebraska. But Oregon's talent depth exposed Ohio State's defense. Maybe that's the case. But ultimately, I'm pretty happy with what the defense was able to do yesterday.
Yeah, I thought the defense, I thought they played well. I think that it is a little bit unfair to compare games with Indiana and Nebraska. Indiana caught Nebraska off guard. I don't think they took Indiana seriously as much as they should, and they paid for it. Freshman quarterback too. I mean, he's one of the few true freshman quarterbacks playing in, the bigger leagues. And I thought Dylan Raiola he looked pretty solid, and I thought like Nebraska really brought it. And Andy, you really said that's what you thought was going to happen on Wednesday. I thought that the defense for what situation they're in, I agree with you guys. Since it is a defensive thing, and we did talk about it, Dylan. We talked in text, but we didn't get to talk with you Wednesday. But the precedent of throwing trash on the field of bad calls, and we all knew if bullshit happens in Ohio Stadium, it's trash is going on the field, and it happened with that bad targeting call, and it wasn't overturned. What were your guys' takeaways? Andy, we'll start with you. What was your takeaway on the really crappy call on targeting?
Yeah, I mean, it was just that. It sucked. At no point did Arvell Reese lead with his head. He led with his shoulder. To me, upon review, I didn't even think that he made contact with his head at all. So what is the definition of targeting? I know that they say, like, if you lead with your shoulder and you make contact with the head, that could be considered targeting too. But Arvell
Again,
Reese
your shoulder's
textbook,
right
like,
here. Your head's here. How are you
yeah,
what are you supposed to do with your head?
right. I mean, when you lead with your shoulder, your head is automatically going to come down. That's just simple physics of the human body, folks. Okay, we can't change that. We can't go, okay, you need to like turn your head to the side 45 degrees and then lead with your shoulder at a 33-degree angle. Come on, folks. What are we doing here? Are we that stupid that we're trying to create a safer game, but by being so ridiculously mentally repugnant that we are now, creating these dumb rules? And we're not even really following and using our heads logically, even upon review, to go, okay. And when I say we, I mean the refs, and go, okay, he led with his shoulder. He didn't make contact with the head. That's not targeting. And yet they still kept the call. Awful. Luckily, things did not get to the Texas-Georgia game level where some unruly fans were throwing water bottles onto the field. But like we said, Drew, that game is probably going to set a precedent with college football fans throughout the country. And yeah, some Ohio State fans started throwing water bottles onto the field, but it was a couple here and there. They did stop play for a couple of minutes, but otherwise it did not get to the egregious extent that it did that Texas Georgia game. But yeah, the call in itself was just terrible, just awful, awful, awful. And I don't know what it is going to take once again for us as humans to logically think that the human body and physics and mechanics and you throw scientific, equations into the mix and go, well, let's type it on the. What are we going to do? To just think rationally that there are going to be certain instances when you are playing a physical game where the point of the game is to take your body and ram it into somebody else's body to stop them from gaining a certain amount of measurements on a grassy field. Okay. Sometimes stuff like that's going to happen. And you can't logically sit here and go, I get it. If you're leading with your head and you're literally helmet to helmet, that is kind of one thing, but there are going to be a ton of other instances where just simple physics is not going to allow any other circumstance than leading with your shoulder. And sometimes, yeah, they're going to hit them in the head because maybe the guy is sliding down to the ground at the last second. And of course, you're going in and you're going in with your shoulder to hit them in the chest. And then all of a sudden at the last second, bink, they slide underneath and then you hit them with your helmet. Well, once again, simple physics, folks. I realize we can go back and we can watch a slow motion replay of it and go, oh God, that was clearly targeting. But when you're on the field and the action is happening this fast and you got guys flying all around you, simple, physics sometimes are going to take a back seat to logic. And that didn't happen yesterday.
Dillon, were you what's your thoughts on the targeting? We've seen a lot more. It seems like they dialed back targeting last year too. It wasn't as bad. Now they're dialing it back up.
So often I have to take the other side of these conversations with people because a lot of times people get their hatred for targeting in general mixed up with like the actual rule and how it's written. So people will say it's a bad call and like, no, if you like to quite literally by the letter of the law, like that's exactly what targeting is by the letter of the law. So if they're enforcing the letter of the law, that's what targeting is. You might hate it, but that doesn't make it less of a law or a penalty, based on what the law is. But this was not that at all. Like there was nothing there. There was no indicator. There wasn't launching. He didn't leave with the crown of his head. There wasn't, helmet to helmet contact. I don't think so. Like there was no indicator at all. I don't understand it one bit. So, I, in no way, shape, or form is this, part of the letter of the law. I took some flack earlier this year when Denzel was, ejected from the game. But like to me, like there was an indicator there by the letter of the law. You can sit there and say you hate the targeting rule, and I do too. So in so many ways, I hate it as well. But by the letter of the law, I thought that was, that was targeting by the, the way the rule is written. There's just this one's indefensible. I have no idea. I don't think Ryan Day has any idea either. And to the point about throwing stuff, I was standing down there, I don't know, 5 feet away from Ryan Day when that call came in, and so all the throwing and shit. I was, it wasn't a lot of it, but for what
Dylan
was
threw some stuff on the field too.
was
He's
right
just
next
not.
to me, so I thought I was gonna take one. I felt like I was in Beirut, so. But anyways, yeah, I did. This one's indefensible. There's just no indicator. I have no idea. And these are the kind of calls. Like I said, other calls you can at least see like this is the way the rules written, and this is what they're trying, this is what they're trying to eliminate from the game. So this is why they called it. These are the kind of calls right here, though, that has, pretty much the entire country, everybody universally, like, united in saying, like, if this is targeting, if this is targeting, like, this is so far past the spirit of the rule and what they wanted to do with targeting to get some of these dangerous plays out of the game. And if this is targeting, I think everybody universally has agreed. So I've seen on social media, at least, Ohio State fans or not, even Ohio State haters, to say, like, if this is targeting, like, we're officially all the way gone, in the sport of football there, because it's just, you can't play the sport of football, as Andy was alluding to. You can't play the sport of football the way the way it's designed, the very core of what football is. You can't play it and that be targeting. Literally, those two things cannot coexist. They can't. So like I said, I've seen a lot of people saying the same thing. If that's targeting, man, then we're so far gone in the targeting. We already are so far gone, but if that's targeting, that's probably officially the final nail in the coffin that we can't do this. So,
What did you pass interference seems to be another call that's it's been confusing because they're letting a lot of contact happen, and then like they allow contact, and it's like when to call pass interference, when not to. Seems to be something that's also going on across the league, and it's frustrating. And it did seem like the Buckeyes got some good call. Like they did, I think they did get an offensive pass interference, which actually helped the Buckeyes in a big way.
they got two, didn't they?
I think so. Yeah. So I mean, that seems to be.
This was kind of like a weird reversal, though,
Yeah.
from the Oregon game, because Nebraska, on their first play of that final drive, where they're trying to get down the
Yeah.
field to score, a game-winning touchdown, on the very first play, they got called for offensive pass interference. That they backed them up like 12 yards because of where it happened. So very, very weird how, like, it kind of the fortunes of Ohio State football on one game, it bit them in the butt, and then the next game it came back to actually help them out.
I just think it's confusing for the fans, and it's frustrating because there just seems to be inconsistency with both targeting and pass interference, and it's like, what the hell? Like, are we going to let them play, or are we not going to let them play? And it's even year by year. But moving on, we got to wrap things up. We'll hit Andy's favorite segment. Screw the blue. They won yesterday, Andy. They pulled it out.
Oh wait.
Yeah, they pulled it out. What's your?
They did. They did.
This
Well,
is your segment here.
they did have like what a 2 touchdown lead, and then Michigan State kind of scored late, and then Michigan was able to fend them off for the 1 touchdown win. But the part of the segment though that I kind of am gonna try to like pick on Michigan to screw the blue, the smelly rodents. They had to use a trick play offensively to create a touchdown, which actually was a pretty beautiful trick play. I can't believe I'm actually praising them. But it was. But the fact that they still had to use a trick play to generate some kind of offense to score a touchdown, kind of pathetic, don't you think, they're rodent fans? And then number two, I get it. It's the state of Michigan rivalry. And the two teams really dislike each other to the point where I'm not even sure exactly who started it, but there was a fight at the very end. It wasn't really a fight. It was more just a scuffle, but really kind of pathetic. Don't you think, rodent fans, that you guys are having to sit there and squabble with your little brother? I mean, come on. They're your little brother. Give them a break, just pat them on the head and shuffle them away. All right. They're just absolutely pathetic rodent fans. Okay.
Dylan, you got any screw the blue?
No, obviously it was a good win for Michigan. Look, the Michigan program is where it is this season. This would have been just a disaster of a game to lose at home against your hated rival.
Yeah,
It was a good win for Michigan. However, they did it. Look, we know that offense is still an absolute joke. They
it's
will get
terrible.
they will get beat at least 2 more times, if not 3 more times. But this was a win that Sharon Moore desperately needed. Speaking of head coaches, Jonathan Smith, the Michigan State head coach, he's a jackass. He's another lame duck Michigan State head coach, waiting to be fired. That guy's an idiot. So that's probably my biggest takeaway from that game. Yeah, no,
I was just screw Michigan. So let's just
right,
shit on
right.
Michigan. I'm
But
happy about it.
it was a good win for Michigan. It's a win they had to have. Yeah, they had to pull out all the stops to do it, but that's what you knew they'd have to do with that offense. That's just the fact of the matter. Credit to Sharon Moore for doing that and having the guts to do some of that stuff. And so it was a good win for them. But that's still a bad football team. And they have at least a couple more losses on the schedule, if not a few. So.
Speaking of jackass lame ducks, he's not necessarily a lame duck jackass, but he's not that far from it. James Franklin, we're playing Penn State, going into Happy Valley. It's a noon game, thankfully. It's not a night game. Uh, we got like 5 minutes, so let's do. Dillon, how do you think next week goes? I think the best thing we have going for us is James Franklin can't beat top 5 teams,
That's
top
absolutely
10
right.
teams.
Yeah, yeah. Well, this matchup to me is a matter of who do you have more faith in? Do you have more faith in that Ohio State offensive line, or do you have more faith in James Franklin to figure out how to win a game of this magnitude? And I don't really know the answer to that, to be honest with you. You can make cases for both sides. I know from an X's and O's on the field standpoint, like I do not feel good about this at all for Ohio State at all.
Drew Aller got hurt in the
Yeah,
end of
well,
the game too.
and that's the other wild card is who knows what his status is, and if he plays, how healthy he is or his ability to stand in there and which it was a knee injury, correct?
I think so. I went to bed before the game finished.
Either
I think.
way, he's gonna have to drive off of it, to deliver the ball. So, but yeah, from an X's and O's, like on the field standpoint, I don't feel good about this at all from Ohio State's perspective. Knowing what's awaiting them with that Penn State defensive front and Abdul Carter, especially against that offensive line, that just seems like just a absolute nightmare of an offensive afternoon waiting to happen. And in that case, I would trust Penn State's offense to generate, enough to go win that football game against Ohio State's defense. So I don't feel great about it. Now, I'm not going to say until Ohio State can't go win that game at all, partially because it is a James Franklin coach team and partially because Penn State's not a world beater. I think that they're a very good football team. Do I think they're one of the 5 best teams in the country as they're currently ranked? No, I don't. So I don't think that's a world beater, but I do think that, Ohio State's the path to victory for Ohio State just seems very muddled to me and it doesn't inspire a lot of confidence.
So do you think we're shaped at this point in the season with our offensive line than we were last year with our at best mediocre offensive line?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
Andy, how about you?
Yeah, knee-jerk reaction, obviously seeing, as I talked about at the beginning of the show, the fact that they had a nice comeback win over Wisconsin at Wisconsin. Not like Wisconsin's a completely hacked team. I know they're 5-3 right now. Old Ficky, he's trying to get it figured out. But still gave him a good game early on, and then Wisconsin kind of folded late, like they did against USC, and did it once again against Penn State. But on its face, yeah, after seeing what Ohio State did against a average, same record team as Wisconsin, 5-3 at home, you kind of do sit here and go, I think we've all kind of got our question marks. A lot of people out there, I think, are nervous now going into Happy Valley to take on an undefeated, right today, probably not going to change, third-rated Penn State team. You look at statistically, defensively, they're good. They've got like one of the top-rated defenses in the country. Their passing efficiency offense is great. And to that point, Drew Aller gets hurt and they bring in Bo Prabula, I think is his name, Bo Prabula. And he was extremely efficient. I mean, this dude was making some throws and he looked good. So even if they don't have Drew Aller, I think they could stick this Prabula kid in there and he can probably fill in just as effectively as Aller was. So yeah, I've definitely got my reservations too. And to be honest with you, you can't show up the way you did against Nebraska, especially offensively. If you show up defensively against Penn State like you did against Nebraska and offensively like you did against Oregon, okay, if they can put those two together, then Ohio State, this is going to be a great football game. You show up defensively like you did against Oregon and offensively like you did against Nebraska, probably going to get beat by a couple touchdowns. So,
yeah, I'm on the same page. I'm in my normal we'll see category. We got to wrap here. Dillon, how can people read your articles and follow you and slash you on X?
At Delaware Gazette, DEL Gazette. Find the articles. Follow on Facebook, and then on Twitter, you can find me at Dillon Davis 56. A bunch of stuff on there. So appreciate being on here with you guys always and having me and talking Buckeye football.
Hey, love it. I love that you reinforced my doom and gloom of the offensive line. It's at Andy is wired. No, Andy's wired. He loves it when I get it wrong. I'm at Drew Sample. Looking forward to seeing you guys Wednesday at the Woodies. All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in, and make it a great day.
See you guys.
See ya.